Look, will you be absolutely genuine with me? No deception, please. I want you to do something that expresses you without the slightest deception.
Welcome back. We're here at the Genuity podcast. Very special guest today, Dr. Durlan Castro. So in the process of me getting hurt, you guys heard Rosado last week with the stem cells, but before that, I ran into a referred friend for Dr. Castro, who is a chiropractor on paper, but goes way above that with his knowledge. He specializes in something called ART, and we've become very good friends over the course of 3.5 years. I think at one point I was going to you 3 days a week for 18 months. It was a great road. We'll get into it, but we wanted to welcome him here on the show. Thank you for coming.
No problem. It's a pleasure.
And kind of wanted to get started today on, the average person thinks of a chiropractor, me especially, and it's a guy, it's usually some old fucking skinny dude that's just going to crack your back a couple times, and you got to come to me for 10 sessions, and you'll be okay in 10 weeks from now. This is a totally different experience. He's located in Comac, New York, and I wanted to start kind of a throwback of like what made you get into it, and why you went the pathway you went of the healing, because it's so different than your normal chiropractor route.
Yeah, to me, it's a simple story, but it gets pretty complicated towards the end. But I've been bodybuilding since I'm 18 years old. Competed, had a lot of injuries. I went to a chiropractor when I was younger, but never really felt like I was getting everything I needed. I got my neck adjusted, I got my back adjusted, and most of the time it did the trick. As I was going to him, I started then working for him because I was thinking about getting into physical therapy because I wanted that realm. I studied the body a lot. I loved studying about muscles and stuff and injuries. And I definitely knew I wanted to get into that world. And so physical therapy was like, okay, this looks like where I'm going to go. And at the time, I was working for a chiro, Dr. Nikowski. He was way back and he was in Wantaw. And I was working for an orthopedic surgeon, just assisting, just putting people on heat, putting on stem and stuff. And what I started noticing is at the chiro's office, the results were just a little bit different, a little quicker. The PT was doing great, and they were great at strengthening and stuff like that. And back when I graduated, a physical therapist always needed to work under an orthopedic. So you were given orders on what to do by the orthopedic, even though some of the physical therapists I worked for were a little smarter and they knew they had to follow what was written on. You had a script, you had to follow it, and that was it. Where the chiro had his freedom because he was his own doctor. Physical therapists now have a doctorate, so they can pretty much write their own program and stuff like that for the patients. So as I started thinking about it, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to change gears here, and I'm going to go towards chiropractic because I want to be able to dictate how I'm going to treat Mike, how I'm going to treat Taylor, Ian. I want to be able to dictate, not have some ortho who saw you for 2 seconds, took an MRI and said, oh, Mike's got this. This is how you got to treat him. That to me just didn't sit right. And I decided to go to chiropractic college. So getting back to your original thing there, what happens in chiropractic college is that they teach us the adjustment. Everything is coming from the spine, which it is. The nervous system, everything comes from the spine. And as you take the pressure off the spine, you'll release a lot of the tension in the nerves that go to the different muscles and organs and stuff. But as a bodybuilder, when I took anatomy lab, I said, wow, these muscles all connect to the spine. And you could see like the fibrosis built up in these cadavers. And I started thinking like, well, if I just adjust the spine without addressing the muscles, as soon as you do something, it's going to pull that adjustment right back out.
Shit. Okay.
So what happens is that, now you feel like you need an adjustment all the time. I feel like I need an adjustment all the time. So I always kept that in the back of my head, and I would always do like stretching and stuff like that with the when I graduated. I would always do like a spray and stretch, and I would always work the muscle out, but it still wasn't getting to the point where I wanted. It wasn't fixing stuff. Like the patient would feel better when they left, but they'd come back and be like, I still got this. So 1996, I graduated in 93. 1996, I had a bad shoulder injury. And again, I was competing and stuff. And nobody could fix it. I was going to PT. I had gone to an orthopedic. MRI showed inflammation, but no tears. And everybody was rest. Okay, I would rest it, but as soon as I went back to the gym, just doing a regular bench, just doing a regular push-up, I would feel the pain right in my front delt. I talked to a buddy of mine in New Jersey who had come across this guy who was teaching or just starting to show how to do this technique called active release technique. And now this is in 98.
Holy shit.
And so I have this shoulder pain or trying to work around it and stuff. And he says, hey, I got this guy, Dr. Michael Leahy from Colorado. I ran into him at a sports seminar, and he's doing this crazy technique for muscles. Why don't you come down? He's going to be in Jersey teaching a few guys that I got together. And why don't you come to Jersey and see if he can help you out? So I'm like, great. Listen, nobody else is helping this out. I want to get back on board. So I go to Jersey. It's like 2 hours away. And I meet Dr. Leahy, great guy. And he says, he goes, oh, tell me what's going on. So I tell him what hurts. And he's like, oh, okay, sounds like your subscap. And he says, lay down on the table. And he gets in my armpit and he does. And it, you know, it was uncomfortable, you know. And he's working me out and stuff. And I'm telling you, I was probably on that table for 7 or 8 minutes.
Same as you, like the same thing that
exactly.
you do. Yeah, in and out in 10 minutes.
So he says, go ahead and try to do a push-up. And
now, at this point, you can't even do the push-up. The pain is there. It
would just sting me right in the front. As soon as I started coming down, it would just sting me. So he says, go ahead and try to do a push-up. So I'm like, all right, usually hurt. Well, he goes, let me see if it's any better. And I go down, and I'm like, whoa. And I do like 5, and I'm like, holy shit, that's like 75% better. That's amazing.
Instantly.
And he says, come back 2 more times, you'll be good. I'm like, what? I've been suffering for all this. Sure enough, I went back Saturday and Sunday. Monday, I'm in the gym, and I'm like, all right, this will be the true test. Let me try to bench. I start benching light, but no pain. And I'm like, this is amazing. I call him up. I'm like, Doc, this is amazing. You fixed my shoulder. I've been suffering for months.
Right.
So he says, yeah, no problem. I said, I need to learn this technique. He says, well, Tony's got me coming back to New Jersey in about 6 months. There's a couple more guys. And I said, no, I need to learn this like right yesterday. So he's like, well, come down to Colorado and I'll teach it to you. And 98, I got certified by Dr. Leahy. And then 2000, he made me an instructor. So I've been teaching other providers how to do it. And I teach about 3 to 4 times a year. But it really shifted my practice where I wasn't just a neck and back guy. Now I could treat a hamstring. Now I could treat an ankle injury. Now I could treat, because the premises of ART is whenever we get injured or we overwork a muscle, whether it be from sitting at a computer in a sustained posture where the muscle's firing all day long for 8 hours and you develop these knots in your back, the tissue itself loses oxygen. And now what happens is you form adhesions in that tissue, whether it be the muscle, whether it be the fascia. And Dr. Leahy came up with a process where you're not only able to diagnose, but you're able through a specific contact and then a stretch, you're able to remove or break up those adhesions.
That's what you actually physically feel when you're moving it out. It feels like scar tissue. It's
exactly.
the actual like adhesion that you're moving.
That's it. Yeah, as you're breaking up that scar tissue, and that takes a while to build up dexterity in your fingers to do that. I mean, I remember when I first learned the technique. You know, he teaches protocols, and there's a specific protocol for every muscle, and it's a lot of muscles. And so what I would do is I couldn't wait to get started, so I would just do the protocol that he would teach and pay. I didn't know what I was feeling though. I just knew that if I took it from this point to that point, and this is how like Dr. Leahy
and elongating,
and this is the way Dr. Leahy. All of a sudden, patients like, hey, you know, I feel better. And then lower backs, and then now it's like a sponge. Like I'm like, when are you going to come up? Because at that point, he only had like maybe 40 something protocols, like a shoulder, a neck, you know, like he was all over the place. He hadn't really structured the technique yet.
Right. How many protocols now would there be if you had to?
Oh man,
you know, just ball, like how much is it grown? Wow. So Jesus. When you started, it was 40, and I was over 400.
Yeah, now it's
100
times. It's
more
crazy
protocols.
Because now you got a spine program. You got another module that does just lower extremity. You have another module that does just upper extremity. Then you have a nerve module Then you have a level 2 module. So there's a lot of stuff that he's constantly evolving, and the way he thinks about the body and the way the muscles move is pretty amazing. So
Holy
shifted my
shit.
whole.
I have a question
practice.
just about kind of how you got into that. So you said that you were a bodybuilder in the past. I assume competitively pro athlete level.
I got my pro card in 2011.
Do you think if you didn't wind up competing in that bodybuilding sector that you would have wound up taking this course of action in that route from having that injury? Do you think that you bodybuilding and getting that shoulder injury is what projected you forward into wanting to learn?
Yeah.
So you
Absolutely.
okay? See, that's
Yeah. So it was like
so you're thankful for it, kind of, yeah.
A bad event, and it's amazing because everything happens for a reason, right?
Now, with that, did you wind up cementing yourself in the bodybuilding community with being able to help a lot of those pro athletes?
So it's funny. Yes, my first patient was Dave Palumbo.
Oh yeah,
Shit. Okay, I didn't know that.
So Dave
Guy's a fucking
and
legend,
I have been friends for a long time, and we were going to the same gym in Belmore, Gold's in Belmore, and we would usually see each other. Him, my wife knew each other, and we would see each other at the gym all the time. And he tells, he sees my wife, but he doesn't see me. He's like, "Hey, where's Durlan?" And she's like, "Oh, he's taking this seminar with this guy from Colorado and blah blah blah." And he says, "Oh, what is it about?" So she's like, "I don't know. I think it's about fixing muscles and stuff." So he's like, "Tell him to call me because my shoulder and this." So I get back Monday and I'm like, "Hey, Dave, I want to treat your shoulder," because he goes, yeah, I heard you learn this new technique. And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to." So I'm like, "Well, he's the best study part,
fucking
I mean, at that point, he was weighing like 300 pounds and he was like all cut up. So I work on his shoulder and he's like, "Wow, man, that feels a lot better. What do you call this?" So then he started becoming educated. And next thing I know, I have Victor Martinez coming in. I have Greg Kovacs coming in. Then I have Steve Weinberger calling me and saying, "Hey, would you mind treating Dorian Yates?"
Wow.
So now I'm like,
that's the head judge of the Olympian, owner of Bed Francis, number one gym in the country. For anyone that doesn't know that, guy's an absolute fucking legend.
He's a great guy. And he says, "Hey, I heard you doing." So Dave had told him, like, "Hey, if Dorian's ever in town," Dave was like my best PR guy because he felt better, just like how you are. You got better, and all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, this guy got,
yeah.
So now Dave tells Steve, and then Steve calls me up and he's like, "Hey, next time Dorian is in town, he's having a problem." He had just torn his tricep and or bicep. I think it was a bicep. And so he had been in a sling and stuff. And he says to me, "Hey, next time Dorian's in town, can I bring him by, or can you come by the gym?" And I said, "Oh, I would love to." So sure enough, Dorian gets in town. I get the call and I'm like, I'm a bodybuilder now. So I'm like, holy shit, like this is Dorian Yates,
six-time Olympian
and
winner.
I'm like, and he was like, this was like 98. So he was
golden era.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he was like on the verge, like he had already gotten a couple injuries. So he comes in a couple of times. I treat him at the gym. I take my table and I'm like all excited like a kid. I told my wife, "Holy shit, I'm going to treat Dorian Yates today." So I said, "I hope he feels better." So I treat his arm and right away he's like, "Hey man, I could straighten that out better." He's like, "Hey, could you check out my hamstring? I got this long standing." So I put him on the table and I'm working on his hamstring, doing ART, and he gets up and he's like, "Wow, yeah, that feels better." And that's the one thing about ART is that, especially athletes, it's like an instant,
right?
So the athletes love that,
right? Especially
the
people that are more in tune with their body.
Yes, so they feel like an instant boom.
I was actually when you say that the athletes feel it instantly, if you take somebody who is just non-athletic at all, doesn't do any physical activity, would the response of their body be identical to what an athlete's body would be? Would they be able to feel it almost as radically quick? Or because we're athletes and we're more in tune with ourselves and because of our muscular structure and composition, do you think that it gives us the ability to kind of be able to heal quicker? Okay?
That's the big thing.
Okay.
It's your ability to heal quicker, where the sedentary person, because their muscles are weaker, because their fascia is a little thinner,
a little bit more
atrophied
and stuff like that.
Exactly. So them, it takes a little bit longer. Where an athlete, I have these high school athletes that come in with an injury and it's one treatment.
Instantaneous.
Because you know your body better.
Right back on the field because they're able to recover so quick.
Yeah, so I know like chiropractic, I feel like everyone's gotten an adjustment at some point or another, and you kind of lay on the table and they bring your hips over one way and the other, and you get some cracks, and they might like kind of crack your neck sideways. And to me, that just, it feels like it's all bone and it's all like alignment.
Yep.
So how would you like explain really what you're doing when you're doing ART, and like what like physical manipulations are you actually kind of making? Because I know we've kind of seen it before where you're kind of pulling and pushing, but what's like the philosophy, the deeper philosophy behind it, and the mechanism of it?
The mechanism of it is that when fascia or tissue gets injured, there's inflammation first. That's the body signal that there's an injury.
Right.
What the body does is starts shutting down the circulation to the area. That allows healing to take place, where fibrosis is now causing to kind of interlay into the area that's hurt or injured. What happens a lot of times is when that fibrosis gets laid down and there's myofibroblasts and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't have a direct segue on where to go. So a lot of times it gets tangled. And,
almost like a cocoon.
Right. So if you picture the fascia is like a big spider web.
Right. That's under your skin above your muscle.
Right. And what it does, it kind of connects muscle groups together.
But it's not actually muscle though, right? Isn't it more like a
tissue?
It's a tissue.
Gelatin like tissue?
Yeah. It's like I call it a spider web.
Okay.
So we're pretty much just breaking up. We're facilitating the movement of that muscle. So, if a patient comes in with a bicep injury, now all of a sudden it's like, when I go to try to straighten it out, it hurts. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that muscle, the adhesion where the muscle is, I'm contacting it, I'm shortening the muscle, and then I'm holding the contact, and then I'm lengthening the tissue to its full range, because my goal is to get that muscle to function as close to normal and get that tissue as close to its regular length and function as I can. So different than a massage. Massage is great. We refer massage all the time. But massage gets you circulation to the area.
Right. But doesn't get it out,
great.
though. Doesn't get the stuff
It doesn't
out.
restore the normal function to the muscle. So that's where Leahy kind of differentiated himself.
So that circulation, I guess, will amplify maximum blood flow to the area to assist in the healing process, but it doesn't actually heal what's going on. It can just help trigger a healing mechanism, right?
There's a lot of mechanisms that happen within 24 hours, sometimes within a few hours of doing an ART technique.
Because I feel like, so chiropractic is just bones, and you're just going to, as soon as you tweak again, it's back and forth.
It's alignment.
And then physical therapy, I find, so you're saying is basically like, if I'm injured, right, I can't move it. And even if in the physical therapy, like if you do like a positive, negative, positive is like flexing, and then the negative, or the unflexing is where the adhesions are coming out. Physical therapy won't do that because you can only work on the muscle. There's nothing to get the toxic shit out of there. So the ART is removing that toxicity, unblocking the fascia to get the fresh blood in.
Yeah. So what's happening now is that I'm finding that more, since I've been teaching for a while, more physical therapists are catching on. Because to me, and when I teach, I tell the physical therapists, I'm like, you guys have the best world here because you guys deal with the injuries directly. So what happens sometimes with some PTs is that they want to get so quick into the exercising. They see a muscle, it's weak. Oh, let's get that. We'll do this. We'll make the glutes fire. But if that glute is bound up with adhesions and it's not working properly, you can exercise that till the cows come home.
Right.
So the best thing, and I tell the physical therapists who take the course, I tell them, listen, clear that muscle out first. Get it working normally. And then you exercise, and you'll see your treatment time frame go from 12 to 16 weeks down to 6 to 8 weeks, where that patient's like, wow, I feel so much better. I can't tell you how many times I get patients coming in where they've either been to a chiro who's been treating them for months and months. They're not feeling any better. Same with physical therapy. I'm like, well, maybe he's missing this component of it. And I'll treat their muscle, and within 4, 5, 6 treatments, they start feeling better. When I treat a patient, I feel around, I see if I can help them, and I tell them, listen, I think I can help you. Give me 3 to 5 visits. I never tell a patient, well, this is going to take 24 visits. And I don't do that. So I tell them, give me 3 to 5 visits. If you're not starting to feel better by 3 visits, and by the 5th visit, you're not telling me, hey, doc, I'm feeling a difference. I might have a little pain, but you know what? I wasn't able to move like this, or I wasn't able to bend like this. I keep going. I'm like, okay, that's a good sign. That means the adhesions probably were the majority of your problem. So let's keep working on it. And then I send him to a PT. to
Right.
rehab
Now the blood
Now they
flows
can
back to
strengthen it.
normal.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's the
I
best
experienced what you just said because I went to Rob, who introduced me to you he got licensed from you.
Right.
And he's a very aggressive PT. He's the one if you're here for no fault, like we'll just do it. But if you're here to get ready, like that guy will give you undivided attention.
Yeah.
So we were doing Frankenstein walks and all this crazy stuff, and I wasn't walking without a cane, but I was just out of the wheelchair, and I had no VMO. I didn't realize at the time, which is like that bottom tier drop of your quad. And the other thing about going with him is you break it down how the body works so easily that you start learning the injury, and can educate yourself. So we go about 6 weeks. I had the first round of stem cells from Rosado, and we're going, and I'm thinking I'm getting stronger, and I go for the follow-up for the orthopedic. It's all scar tissue. And this is before I went to you. So I thought I was getting stronger. It feels like it's stronger, but it's just the tightened fascia and the scar tissue that's built up. It was so fucking bad. I had to go back under surgery where they literally crack your leg like a chicken bone while you're under anesthesia.
Yeah.
So I went to physical. This is not an exaggeration. I'll get this other doctor coming on. We'll confirm this. So I was going to Rob 6 days a week for 2 years while going to you 3 days a week for 18 months. That's how determined I was to get better. And I remember being like 6 weeks in and they cracked my leg. The fucking pain was worse than the original surgery. And now I couldn't do anything because now you feel this scar tissue floating around. And that's when Rob's like, listen, you got to go to this guy Castro. And that's when Rob Palmer and Anthony Shea told me to go to there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, a doctor's a doctor. I can't fucking stand the chiropractors. And I remember walking into you, and I remember the first time that you worked on the VMO, and I felt the adhesions come out like you would detox your kidneys,
Yeah, you were like a sponge. Like, from what I was telling you and how you were absorbing it and saying, and then your fucking will is like crazy. I mean, when he first came in, your leg was like a chicken leg.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, like this guy's whole leg is like atrophied. And I remember you had a nerve stuck in there, and we started working the nerve. And then every time he would come in, he's like, hey, I'm getting better. And then, months go by and he's like, hey, I'm going to start squatting. I'm like, Mike, take it easy. And then he's squatting. And then all of a sudden he's like, hey, I'm playing soccer. I'm like, Mike, take it easy. But he just wanted, he wanted to get back to as normal as he could. And but it worked out. It worked out great.
And that it was crazy how the fascia, like even the last time when we were working on my shoulder, and you found like the fascia stuck at my wrist.
Yes.
And like, it's a really cool experience, bro, because something's wrong. And then again, like I knew nothing about, within 3 or 4 visits, now I know what a supraspinatus is and the front delt and the rotator and the long head of a bicep. And he shows you on the phone. And I'm like, we're trying all different shit. And it's cool because the more educated you are, he's not just going to come in and just like, this is what we're doing. He'll like talk to you.
Yeah.
And like, I'll throw some ideas at him. Like, oh, that's a good idea. And we stretch my arm out and he fucking does the ART to my wrist, and you just feel like a portal open up in my shoulder. And I'm like, holy shit. He's like, yeah, man, it was jammed by your wrist, and it's just a cool experience.
And some patients like you, like Taylor, like they want to hear like, what's going on? Like what, because you guys are educated, you know your bodies. You know, usually the athletes like to hear like, hey, what are you working on now? Why is this tight over there? Some patients just get me better.
And you really are out of there. I've been in your office. There's 10 people waiting and 3 people in the room. You're still out of there in a half hour because you're the guys are just in and out. And if you don't bullshit with them, they're in and out in 7 minutes, 10 minutes.
I've been doing this now since I've been chiropractor since 93. I've been doing ART since 98. And, in the beginning, I used to feel guilty because I was like, wow, I'm charging this money. But, the patients were averaging between 8 to 15 minutes treatment. But they were getting better. Yeah. And I was charging very little. I remember when I first started in the gym, it was $20. Oh. When I first started doing ART, because I wanted to get the word out about, I was the first guy in New York doing ART. So I was one of the first 14 in the United States who learned it from Dr. Leahy. So my thing was like, I just want to get the word out. Dave Palumbo was the best PR guy because you got to go to this guy. So I had this little room in Gold's Gym in Belmore, and I would have these top bodybuilders just coming in and getting worked on, and the word was getting out, but I was charging $20 because I just wanted them to come in 8 to 12 minutes. I'm like, I'm done with you. So here, $20. So it was volume, And then after a while, Dr. Leahy was, he would sit me down. He's like, Durlan, you're getting really good. I want you to become an instructor. He goes, hey, what are you, and I told him, he goes, are you crazy? He goes, people need to pay you for your knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Not, so we had one incident where my secretary, Nancy, she's great. And we had this one guy come in. He had a pretty bad calf injury. And he comes into the office and he leaves and he's a little disgruntled, And he's like, $80. I was in here for like 15 minutes. So Nancy was like, okay. She goes, do you feel better? He goes, yeah, no, I feel better, but I was only here 15 minutes. And she's like, well, if you feel better, what does it matter how much time he spends on you? So, after a while, in any expertise, you're paying for how much knowledge you have and how efficient I could be. And I tell the students who take the class, the more you do and the more injuries you see, the more proficient you get at treating it.
Of course.
So you're going to see a lot of the same injuries, and you start getting to know after an amount of years that you're doing it, what works for that injury. Once in a while, I have a bad case that comes in, and I'm like, all right, I got to put my thinking cap on. Let me just work a little bit longer and stuff. So some patients do take a little bit longer, but usually it's anywhere from 8 to 15 minutes.
I don't think you can put a price cap on being healthy. And I think people forget that nowadays.
I've sent 5-6 dozen people to him. I'll get $80. They said, yeah.
You know what I would give?
It's a Starbucks coffee for 2 weeks.
Yeah, dude.
So if you go once a week and you don't go out drinking on Saturday or Sunday and you don't drink your Starbucks for the week, it's cheaper and you could walk.
And that's the thing. Like I was talking to you before we went on camera about my sciatic pain. This would be worth emptying my bank account for at this point. Like that's how much pain I'm in on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Can't do anything, can't squat, can't stretch, can't do anything until I start sprinting, and then it loosens up. So for somebody like me coming in and just being able to walk out of an office and bend over to put my shoes on with not saying, ow, fuck.
Right.
Like there's no price limit on that.
Or just to have hope. I think, when I treat patients and I teach this, and when I teach the technique, I said, as a doctor, your intent, too many guys out there they want to get rich. They want to get, they want to think about the money. I said, if you're thinking about the money, man, your practice is going to go down really quick.
It's funny. We said that last night because we had Kate on, and it was really about how the money will wind up coming just from based off of the love and the appreciation that you're putting into actually feeling fulfilled about something that you love doing.
And your intent. Like my intent when Taylor or Mike or you come in, my intent is to help you out. Unless I completely see an MRI that I'm like, you know what, I'm not even going to touch this because this is going on. But my intent initially is to try to get you better. If my intent is just to, let me see how many visits I can get off this guy, man, that you're never going to get better.
But I really feel like that's how regular chiropractors are. Like, because I went to one, that bottom was an S1 pops out all the time. And it's funny because now, since I do the ART, I know when it's about to buy, and I'll go, we're in the gym, I'm like, fuck it, I'll just go to you real quick.
Yeah.
But with the chiropractor in the past, I'm like, this guy's going to have me here twice a week for 6 weeks, the same fucking thing. Like nothing ever it was like a Band-Aid. It was never cured. And like with you, it's such an experience because, for anyone that's ever talked to me too, like it just happened on a golf outing 2 days ago. They'll see the scar on my leg and we'll start talking. And the average person's like, did you go to like medical school? And I'm like, no, it's my boy Durlan just fucking tells me what's going on, And then you can start relating it to everything.
Yeah.
And like, bro, the wealth of knowledge you have, I said, dude, this is literally just bullshitting with my doctor in the treatment. And then when you get someone who's educated and you're like, what does he charge? I'm like, dude, it's $80, And you're like, no fucking way. Because if I go once a week, it's a couple $100, and I'm like, and he's on your beck and call. Like, how many times I called you like, hey man, I'm coming in real quick, popped out my S1 or
Absolutely.
right, and you're in and out in 5 minutes. And I think that education is
so with that
more important than
and with
anything.
that education. So to go even further into your career, then you were treating all these bodybuilders. I know that you said that you were Dorian Yates' personal guy for a while. So now what happens after that? Where does your career take you after that? Did you wind up branching into any other segments, into any other sports?
You wound up going to England with him, right?
Well, yeah.
Didn't he fly you into England?
So I treated him at Bev's gym one day, and he was really getting good results. And he says to me, this is back in 98, so he was teetering on retire. He had already won 6 Olympias. And monster guy. You know, he was like 285. I mean, he was ridiculous. Yeah, he was, but the nicest guy. So I finished treating him, and he says, he goes, wow, I could really use you in England for a week. I'm thinking he's bullshitting, you know. I'm like, yeah, that would be cool, right? He goes, no, man. He goes, I'd like to have you in England for a week. Treat me and Ernie Taylor. I don't know if you remember Ernie Taylor. He had the big, crazy triceps and stuff. And I'm like, I would love to. So he's like, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to fly you and your wife. I'm going to put you up at a hotel near my house. We'll train, and you'll treat me at night. I said, seriously? He goes, yeah. He goes, let's get it done. You give me a date. So sure enough, flies my wife and I, puts us at this beautiful castle type of hotel.
Awesome.
And every morning he would come. And now at the time, I don't know if any of you guys seen that Blood and Guts.
Oh, yeah.
His training
That was
video.
my first ever gym regimen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
They used to play it at Infinity in Farmingdale.
all the time, right?
At
On
Smith
the
Street.
yeah.
And he was working out inside that gym outside like the garbage alley.
So Temple Gym. So
Yeah.
this is our routine, right? So now I'm staying again. Now I'm encased in bodybuilding. I'm competing. I'm like bodybuilder guy, you know. So I go and I get to the hotel, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna pick you up at this time in the morning. You guys can come to the gym and work out. So he picks us up in this badass like 750 BMW, and we get in, and he puts on this crazy like hard rock music, and you could tell he's just getting in the zone, no talking at all. My wife's in the back seat, I'm in the front seat, and we get to Temple Gym, and it's just like, I'm like, holy shit, this is like a fantasy camp, you know? We're walking down the stairs. So I would work out, and there's Leroy, his training partner that's and it would fucking sounded just like the video, man. He's just trashing himself in the gym, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing, you know? So then on the last day, the day before last, Leroy had to go somewhere, and he says, hey, what are you training today? So I said, I'm up to legs. Now, legs was my strong point. I always had big legs, and I could train them. Upper body was a little bit smaller, but so he says, you want to train tomorrow? So I'm like,
Oh, yeah,
shit.
what?
I just seen him train for like 4 days, and I'm like,
You're going to throw
this
up all over
guy's
yourself.
crazy. So he says, he goes, let's train tomorrow. So I'm like, all right, great. So we get to the gym, and we start training, and he's just kicking my ass. And I never yell. Like when I train, I'm not a yeller, you know? I was fucking yelling. And now we finished quads, and my wife is like, she gives me a thumbs up. Hey, you're doing good. Like, I still have my color and shit. And now he's like, hey, let's take a drink of this. Let's hydrate, and we'll do hamstrings. So train hamstrings. And he's just, you know, when you think you're done.
You're not done.
And he's like, 3 more. And then you think you're done with those 3.
You're not
like,
done.
2 more. Yeah, he's just, and you're like, fuck me. Like you just, and so that later on that night, so the routine would be we would train. He would take my wife and I back to the hotel. We would have like a dinner by ourselves and stuff. And then we'd have a lunch. And then for dinner, I never put my hand in my pocket. The guy was like the best host. He would treat me, and then we would go back to his house. He had a portable table, and he would just pick out a body part. Hey, today, can you treat this? And can you treat that? So that's what I would do. And I'd be drenched because I'd be working on him probably about 35 minutes, 40 minutes on.
Christ.
Yeah. And he was
That's a workout
thicker.
in and of itself,
Oh, my
though,
God.
dude. You're trying to break up those legs, dude.
I remember being at his
Impossible.
house, and we're just about to have, he's cooking some steaks, and I tell my wife, we're sitting down, he's by the barbecue, and I'm like, wow, look at his fucking calves. They're like legs. I can't believe it. So after we had trained, we're talking, and he's like, hey man, you train pretty hard, you know, your legs. So I'm like, oh, thanks. I said, that was a great workout. He's like, you're about 75% at max. I'm like, 75%? Dude, I was killing myself. And you realize how fucking hard you got to train to be like him or Ronnie Coleman. Like those guys who set the precedent for mass and just, they train so hard.
It's that full exertion to complete failure.
And they fucking love it.
Yeah.
You know, I remember asking him, I said, well, this is our last night. We're having dinner. I'm like, hey, Dorian, I'm like, all right, I'm going to get asked because everybody knows I'm here treating you. I said, are you making a comeback? Are you going to? So he looks at me and he's like, hey, man, I got nothing else to prove. I've won it 6 times.
He's training like this just to train.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
He says, I've won it 6 times already. I got nothing else to prove.
Yeah.
I just want to train. I want to be able to train. That's why I'm having you work on me. So I said, wow. So no comeback. He goes, nope. He goes, and there's a motherfucker named Ronnie Coleman coming up. So he could see like Ronnie coming up, and he says, I'm done. And that night, that following month or something like that, we went to the Olympia in '98, and that's when he announced his official retirement. But that was a cool experience.
So where do you go after that then? Did you wind up branching off into any other physical segments?
Yeah, I got into Dave Palumbo again, who's a great PR guy, and he was working closely with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon from the WWE. And my segue was with Dave was my boys were they were 4 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old at the time, and they were really into WWE wrestling. So they were going to be at Nassau Coliseum. So I called Dave and I'm like, hey, Dave, is there any way you could get us tickets for me and my boys and stuff? And Dave was great. Dave was like, yeah, no, I'll go with you and I'll take you backstage. I want you to meet Triple H. So I'm like, hey, great. That's great. So we go to the wrestling match and, my boys are over the top excited. And we go backstage and he introduces me to Triple H and Dave is like, I'm telling you, if you're ever injured, you got to get some ART. This is the guy, but like he reminds you of you. So, and I'm like, oh my God, like, dude, this is Triple H. Like, you're telling him, like, I'm going to treat him. So he's like, you got to go to him. So he's like, hey, man, nice to meet you. Really nice guy. I meet Stephanie. And a couple of months go by, and I get a phone call. And they say, hey, do you know anybody in Connecticut that could do some ART that could treat Triple H? So I'm like, fuck, I really want to treat him. But yeah, I said, no, I've been teaching, so I'll find you somebody. So I find this guy, and he's close by to where they live. And I should have known it wasn't going to work out because I called the guy up, this doctor, and I'm like, hey, I got you a good hook. I said, Triple H, their assistant's going to call you. And he's like, who?
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
For those, and by the way, not to cut Durlan off, but for those of you who don't know who Triple H is, he was the gentleman infamous for the suck it growing up. So if you were in elementary school, middle school, or high school in the 90s, we all walked around school telling everyone to suck it. Teachers, parents, and friends. Continue.
He was the artery of that.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, the Attitude Era.
Him, Stone Cold, The Rock. He was like
that was the Attitude
WWE
Era.
legend.
So now I tell the guy. So he's like, okay, great. No problem. So bunch of months go by again, almost a whole year, and the WWE is going to be back in the Nassau Coliseum. So I call my buddy Dave up, and I'm like, hey, Dave, is there any? He goes, absolutely, we'll go. We'll do the same thing. I'll go with you guys. I love you boys and stuff. So we go there, we go backstage again, and I get to say hi to Triple H and Stephanie again. I'm like, hey, how did everything work out with the guy? He's like, no, it never happened. So I'm like, what do you mean it never happened? So he says, no, the guy wanted me to, he goes, listen, my schedule is so busy. He goes, the guy wanted me to come to his office and he wouldn't come by the house. I'm like, wow. I said, listen, man, I'm sorry. I said, I really thought it was going to work out. I said, if you ever need anything. So, Dave again is like, nah, this is the guy you got to go to anyway. He taught that guy. But so a couple of weeks after there's WrestleMania, he fights Brock Lesnar and he got banged up a little bit. So I get a phone call from the assistant, and she says, hey, is there any way you could come and treat Paul at his house in Connecticut? So I said, no problem. I'll do some ART. I said, I'll go, And so I remember telling my wife, because I've treated some high-end athletes, and some of them are a little, pompous and,
Of course.
So my wife is like, you going to go all the way to Connecticut? I'm like, oh, it's Triple H. I said, it would be cool to hang out with him anyway, but I said, but if he's, if he's an idiot, I'm not going to keep going back there, So sure enough, I drive, and it's only like an hour and 15 minutes to get to his house. And we sit down, and before I even started treating him, we're BSing. He's a big bodybuilding fan. He's into lifting, straight edge. The guy doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke.
Really?
He's just so into his health. It's ridiculous. So we're talking diet. We're talking for about 35, 40 minutes before I even lay my hands on the guy. So finally I get to treat him, and I'm working on him. And, he had some definitely old injuries that I was like, wow, did you have this going? He goes, yeah, I tore that quad in such and such a year. And so we're going over him. Now I'm breaking up scar tissue all over the place. And I leave his house, and a little over 3 hours later, my wife is like, what the fuck were you doing? Like, you were gone for that long? And I'm like, man, he's the coolest guy. We're just BSing and it was great. But he's got a lot of issues, you know? So the following week, calls me back again. And he's like, hey, you know, can you come back and treat me? And blah, blah. So I start treating him. I remember by the third time I treat him and I'm leaving his house, you know, I shake his hand and I'm like, hey man, I said, is it working? Do you feel? He goes, and he looks at me, Ian, with like, he's like, if I didn't feel better, you wouldn't be back.
There you go.
I'm like, okay, at least you're honest, you know? And then that led me to treating Stephanie. Because Stephanie had some headaches and stuff like that. So he's like, hey, would you mind treating Stephanie? And I said, no, absolutely not. So I go there, treat, and then, you know, eventually that led, I mean, I've known him for like 13, 14 years now. Oh. And then that led to me treating one of his daughters. So then I treated her, and then next thing you know, the other daughter, and then, you know, they got 3 beautiful daughters, and so I treat the whole family, and that segued me to go into now. He saw the benefits of how it was helping him, and he's like, hey man, you know, I'd like to have you at some of the events to help some of the guys.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So now you're the WWE
ART guy.
ART guy.
Yeah. So he was like, no, I want you to come to, and you know, at the time he was wrestling. So any WrestleMania or any event he was at, he wanted me there. So I'd work on him before, I'd work on him after. So, and at the same time, he would find me a room and say, hey, I'm going to tell a couple of guys. So next thing you know, I got Taker in the room. I got Bret Hart in the room. I'm treating him like, so it's funny because everybody's like, who, didn't you get like, I said, you know, there was only one guy that I was like, holy shit. So it was Sting.
Really?
No
When
way.
he came back to the WWE and he wrestled, and I remember, and I'm in my room and I'm adjusting the guys, and they're coming back, Brock Lesnar, and everybody's coming in and out, and Sting comes in. He's like, hey man, can you just work on my neck? And I just remember, because usually, you know, no matter who it is, as soon as I put my hands on them, it's just another spine. It's just another, you know, adhesion that I got to work on. And I put my hands on Sting, and I'm like, whoa, is it because he had full makeup?
Yeah, well, that's a legend, dude.
Not.
That's a wrestling
So
legend.
that was the only thing that kind of like that. He was the only one that, I mean, Taker was, and like I said, they're all great.
Yeah.
Guys, the whole organization, everybody's like really, really cool. You know, you're expecting, like, you know, you start seeing their characters on TV, and you're like, oh,
You think that's who they am? Like, this guy's an asshole. It's the same thing with MMA though. Like, everyone puts that persona on.
And it's so funny because he said to me, he says, it's better to be hated. He says, you want some type of reaction from the audience. If you're too nice of a guy, no reaction is bad, because you're not going to sell tickets. Right. You're not going to sell merchandise. So I was like, wow. So like Stephanie, when she was in and out of the TV realm of it, she would love to be hated. Like, she's like, I love it. I love when the patients, I mean, when the audience like boo, and she goes, that response means that you're touching a nerve. Yeah. And that's what they live on, you know? So they go from baby face to heel to
heel. That's the word. Yeah.
The heel is but that's
what makes them a successful
That's what makes them
actor.
Sells the merch. Yeah.
Was there ever, if you had to do work on one WWE superstar that you never got the chance to do, and it could be even before the era that you were in, like a Macho Man Savage or somebody like that, is there anybody that you wish you got the chance to actually work on?
I would have to say The Rock is one guy, because the way he trains.
Somebody get The Rock for Durlan Castro, dude.
I know that he probably has some adhesions that maybe they've been addressed, maybe they haven't, and I would love to have him feel the effect of it. But I worked on Dave Bautista.
No way.
Really?
Yeah,
he just dropped all that weight too. He's down to like 240.
Yeah, he looks sick. He looks so much better.
He said he's never walked around like under 290, and he's down to 240 right now.
Like,
and when I worked on him,
when
he fought Triple H at his last match, he wanted it to be against Triple H.
He was always a consistent 300,
he was like jacked.
How was he in person? He was a cool dude.
He was a cool dude. Really? Yeah, man, just very soft spoken, and but you know they
say he's like a big nerd. Like he's just like into reading,
very knowledgeable too.
Super knowledgeable.
Yeah, he's like really smart. So it's funny because they definitely create a persona.
This crazy badass.
Yeah, they create a persona on the TV, and
that's so awesome.
You know, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
What about if you could give? I wanted to go a little bit into like I've been reading a lot on like they call it prehabbing. So like someone we like switch gears to like high rocks and a lot of stuff that we run in the OG gym. How could someone use you to prevent injuries instead of everyone always just waits, like they're feeling it.
Yeah.
They wait to get hurt. Now they're coming, now something's already torn or about to be torn. They could have prevented that.
I'm that guy.
How can they go to you? What type of feelings or what's typical muscles that are more irritated than others that if they feel something specific, they could come to your office to prevent getting hurt?
Well, that's a great question. What I call it performance care. I don't call it injury care at that point. So we treat a lot of triathletes. We treat a lot of just regular athletes. And what I try to tell them is, listen, you're an athlete. This is your product. This breaks down, you're done,
right.
So I said performance care is once every couple of months, you come in. If you're generally healthy.
Like an oil change.
Exactly. And what I do is I scan the body. So you might not feel it yet. By the time you feel it, the adhesion's done, the tear's there, something's going on. So usually what I'll do is I'll scan the body. If you're a basketball player, I scan certain muscles. If you're a track athlete, I cert. If you're an OG trainer, where I know you're doing like a lot of compound movements and stuff like that, there's certain muscles that I'll scan quicker and see how they're doing, and then I get on top of those because again, you might not feel it, but it's already accumulating. The scar tissue is accumulating, so now that hamstring's not working right, or the hip flexor has gotten so tight that guess what's next? That hamstring's going to go. Right. So that's what I'll do, and the triathletes are big because, and any type of marathon runner, because what happens is at a certain point, they start ramping their mileage up to 20 miles, 21-mile run,
Taylor.
And I try to tell them, like, listen, before you get to that ramp up, because what happens is, and I started seeing a lot of them come in at the ramp up. This is breaking down, IT band syndrome, lateral knee pain, and I'm like, we'll try to fix it. But now you got how many weeks? Because usually that ramp up is like the halfway mark or a little bit more than halfway.
Right.
So now they got a little bit left. And now I'm like, now I got to try to treat this injury.
Right.
You're still training. So I tell them, listen, before you start your ramp up, once you get to that 10-mile, before you start that ramp up, you come in and you start coming in once a week before the race. So this way you stay optimal. So as you're getting up to that peak performance before you start coming down again, everything is functioning at a maximal.
Right.
I'm curious, you mentioned like scanning the body. Do you ever find any value in like Chinese medicine, like meridians and trigger points and things like that? Or is it really more just anatomy of the joint and the muscle and the insertions and the attachments and those type of things?
I think those both that you mentioned, meridian points and trigger points, real important.
Yeah.
Do I scan those? I don't. I feel more for the texture of the muscle, and I'll test it and see how tight it is. My thing when I first started this is, and again, when I teach, there's so many techniques out there. And I don't put down any technique because ART might not work for you, but you know what? Meridian point therapy does. And that's like, holy shit, that worked for me. So I never put down a technique. But when I learned ART, I said from the very beginning, this is my hammer. I'm not going to go to anything else. I'm going to be the best ART guy I can be. And that's all I do.
I like that.
Yeah. So that's how I feel. Yeah. But all those techniques are really valuable.
I figured you were going to say the IT band. I feel like in the hip flexors, any type of athlete to not go once a month for $80, I think is batshit crazy.
Yeah.
Especially with the running. I want to kind of hear your, experience with it between the high rocks is the triathlons. You're running a full marathon.
Those are crazy.
Well, knock on wood, but I've been very healthy thus far, and I think I definitely don't have the ego that a lot of the members have as far as I need to work every day and I need to never take a day off and I'm going to do 2 sessions in a row. Like I'm very careful about I have a hard day and then I have easy days that are after that. And the miles from there, I don't worry about the paces. I just kind of like take jogs and then I'll have my key speed session or my key weightlifting workout, and if it doesn't feel good that day, I might move it to the next day. Or so I just feel like, and nutrition wise and sleep wise and stress wise, I think I'm very dialed in on that stuff.
You think it would help to throw that
I always think
mix?
that manual body work is like definitely very important, but I'm definitely guilty of waiting until like, all right, this is nagging me now, so I should probably get this taken care of instead of like being preemptive with a lot of that stuff. I missed the conversation that you maybe had before I got here where you mentioned, you're like, I got to stop stretching. And I'm curious to know. Yeah.
So
what
I suffer from horrible sciatica. And I was
That's actually pretty
explaining,
interesting.
for anyone that knows what my calves look like, they're monstrous. And my whole life, I've suffered from super tight calves. And it was because I did a lot of jump training for when I was a volleyball athlete. And what happened was at the start of COVID 5 years ago, I went to pick a pencil up and my sciatic nerve just tweaked. And for the last 5 years, it's never been the same. Now it comes in waves. So there's months where I'm good, and then there's months where I'm absolute shit. Once I have been a regular member at OG for the last year, I was like, let me get into yoga. And shout out to Nicole, best yoga instructor ever. But I realized the more that I started stretching, the worse my sciatic is. So even when I'm in your class, you see me in there 25 minutes ahead of time, stretching, deep stretching, and getting on what I thought, getting all my muscle fibers warm and active. And I do static and dynamic stretches. I was talking to Durlan, and I was like, dude, I'm not good, man. And I'm like, I keep stretching, and nothing's working. Nothing is making it better. And basically, I mean, please proceed with what you told me, because I have to go to him to get this worked out. Because I said that when I do calf raises, my right calf, I can feel tighten and loosen, extend, and then my left calf is just numb. So I can't feel anything. And the only time that my sciatica doesn't hurt me is when I'm doing full-on sprints or my long-distance 5 or 6 mile runs, and I'm good. But when I walk out of bed, I go to put my shoes on, I put my shorts on, I'm in agony 24/7. So please.
Yeah. So what happens, and it's common in a lot of athletes. So what happens is, especially someone like him who has developed calves, who's been working his calves, that tissue gets so tight after a while, the tibial nerve goes right through that calf, and there's compartments in that calf. And what happens is when that compartment or those muscle groups get tight enough, they clamp down on the compartment and trap the nerve and all the vessels. So now you get like a pain in there. But what happens, the nerve gets adhered, gets stuck. So, and it happens a lot in runners too, where they start getting like a sciatica, like deep in their hamstring, and they feel like, oh no, it's a tight hamstring. I want to stretch it out. So what happens when you have an adhesion and it's trapping the muscle, and you now go to stretch it, you're actually taking that nerve and you're twanging it from both ends.
I can feel it when you say
Yeah.
it, dude.
So what happens is when you take that nerve and now you're like, and you think you're doing good, you're like, I'm just going to stretch out. So now I'm stretching the nerve from here because I'm bending forward and I'm touching my toe and I'm stretching the nerve from my toe up.
Meanwhile, it's stuck to the muscle.
It's stuck to the
Oh,
muscle.
my God.
So it's not flowing back and forth.
Right.
It's tensioning from both ends, and you're actually creating more of an issue. That's why a lot of times I have patients that come in, or even like Ian describing it to me and saying, oh, but I do all this stretching and I'm like, and that's great for the other side, the one that's stuck.
That's when you floss it? Is that
yeah,
the
you're going to
flossing?
floss it. But what we need to do is release it, release the adhesion, and we floss the muscle. As we trap the adhesion where it's stuck, we floss the muscle back and forth. Now to get it doing this. So we were talking, and I said it's a common mistake. And then he said to me that when I run, it feels better. And then I told him, I said, that's the differentiating between, is it a structural issue? Like is it a sciatica where it's coming from a disc or a tear? If that's the case, then activity makes it worse. In other words, I can't even run because it kills me. But when a patient tells me activity makes me feel better, then I know, man, that's
So
just an
much
adhesion
better.
that has to get rid of. Because as you're working it, you're bringing blood to the area, and that kind of loosens the fascia and loosens the tissue around the adhesion. So all of a sudden, it's like, oh shit, I feel better. But after you stop, everything gets tight again, and there you are again in that same.
So I
that same
know
issue.
a lot of people with my issue that deal with sciatic nerve pain, especially from OJ, because I complain about it very vocally when I'm in there. If I were to come to you, how would you treat my leg? So where would you start on me?
I would see what part is that. Obviously, I would start with your calf because
Okay.
from your past training and stuff like that, and I would see where the nerve is stuck. Is it stuck in your? There's a groove there in the calf. Is it stuck there? I floss it, and then I have you stretch it out. Does it feel a little better? Does it not feel a little better? It doesn't really feel. Then I'm going to go up. Maybe it's stuck in the hamstring and it's pulling down. We release the hamstring. Then I go up to the glute. and then I see which tissues are tight that way.
Okay.
But with you, I would start in the calf, and a lot of times that's usually the culprit of it. But because you've had it for such a long time, there might be stuff up the chain that we need
it's
to
up
address.
that chain because I can feel it right under my ass cheek and
Yep.
going into the left side of my cheek now also. So
Yeah,
it's
piriformis. So
it
it's probably
has
stuck all
worked
the
its
way
way up slow and steady.
That's what happens, because if the nerve gets stuck in one area, as it gets inflamed, that muscle pierces all these muscles going up. So every time that nerve gets inflamed, the muscles automatically want to protect. So what happens as that nerve is going up the hamstring, and now you irritate it down the calf, but now the rest of that nerve is starting to get irritated. So as it gets irritated up by the hamstring, now the hamstrings go, ooh, I got to tighten up. I got to protect this guy. And then when the hamstring gets tight, what do? I got to stretch it out.
Yep.
But now it's still adhered. So now you're stretching it out and you're twanging that nerve, And then as the nerve goes up into the piriformis, it's getting irritated up there. Now the piriformis is like, I got to tighten up. And it starts tightening up. That's the problem. Sometimes we have patients that come in with their MRI. And their MRI shows, well, I went to my orthopedic and, it's an L5-S1 nerve disc herniation. And as they come into my office, they're sitting down waiting for me. And I'm like, it's a disc herniation?
And you're sitting like
And
that?
you're sitting? I said, when does it hurt? And they're like, as soon as I try to get up. So now when they're trying to get up and I see them not straightening out all the way, I know that's the hip flexor. That's not letting go. It's adhered. Maybe they hurt themselves lifting something. 90% of us walk around with a herniation in our back. Most of the time, it's not symptomatic. It may become symptomatic if you do something wrong. But usually, in my experience, when a hot disc comes into they cannot sit. Because sitting opens the back up a little bit,
makes sense.
and that disc material seeps out a little more and hits the nerve more. So sitting is detrimental. So when I see a patient come in and they're sitting, waiting for me, and they're telling me their story, so I'm like, well, how are you sitting? And I'll look at the MRI, and sure enough, the MRI's got the big disc herniation at L5-S1 and the whole, and they're like, no, I'm okay sitting down, but when I stand up is where the problem is. And I'm like, okay, let's try this treatment. Let's try 3 to 5 treatments and see if it gets better. And we start working the hip flexor, release it. I do a little traction move on the leg, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, it's feeling better now. I could stand up. So we have muscles that we call them wow muscles, and the hip flexor, which is a powerful iliopsoas muscle, it connects the lower body to the upper body, and a lot of nerves go through there. It attaches to all the discs in the lower
Mine
back.
are so tight. My psoas muscles.
Most athletes, especially athletes,
Terrible.
anybody who squats or who deadlifts and stuff like that. If I have a guy come in that hurt himself deadlifting, I'm going right for that hip flexor. I'm not. So once you release that hip flexor, a lot of times you take pressure off that disc. Even if
pressure,
the disc is a little bit irritated now, because what happens is if you don't release the hip flexor, every time, if they have a little herniation, every time they stand up and those fibers go boop and they pull on that disc, all of a sudden now the disc gets irritated again. And you're like, oh, I'm never getting rid of this.
As long as that fascia's opened up and working and smooth,
Man, once that
then it's
fascia,
not tugging anything.
Exactly. So
now
you can stand up, no
align
problem.
it, you're good.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you have a different protocol with meeting certain different types of athletes? So you have a triathlete, you have somebody like Taylor that comes in, you have a professional bodybuilder that comes in. Do you approach the bodies in a different sense because of the type of athleticism that they have, or there's your protocol and it doesn't matter where they're hurt, you approach the body the same way? So does each body with what they specialize in sporting-wise require a different approach for you to look at the body? Or is it just, you're hurt, I'm approaching you the same way? You got a hurt, like my calf injury, you're approaching me the same way you would approach a runner, the same way you would approach somebody like Mike, and so on and so forth.
No, the only difference is, will I approach it initially the same? Yes. The only difference is the associated muscle that's affiliated with that sport. So you might have a calf problem, but you know what? In your sport, maybe it goes up the chain a different way.
So that's what I was asking.
Yeah,
I wanted
so
to see if it would
different
be the
muscle
same
groups.
or different for.
No, it's definitely
very
definitely
interesting.
So 2 or 3 different people could be feeling the same thing,
and it'd be
but
different.
it's 3 different.
That's
ways.
what I wanted to know.
Wow,
How
that's
wild is
interesting. I
that?
didn't know
That's
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
wanted to
That's
know.
very interesting.
Yeah, sometimes it could be just a strain, but another thing I teach in my course is I teach these doctors. Sometimes these doctors get faulted. They want to, because of managed care and stuff like that, they start rushing the visit. and they don't listen to the patient story. The patient story, and I tell the doctors when I teach, I'm like, the patient stories gives you the answer. If you just sit and listen to like I listened to your whole story. You told me how, but if I was just like, oh yeah, no, this is sciatica, yeah, no problem. But if I didn't listen to your whole story, how you used to train, how it goes up, how it feels better, you gave me the answer. I'm just like, I have it in the, oh, okay, this is probably what it is. But if I just did an MRI in your lower back, from all the years of your lifting, I'm sure you're going to have a herniation in your back.
Oh, without a doubt.
So now you're feeling the leg going, your pain going down your leg. Well, it's got to be the herniated disc. Let's do an epidural. Let's do this. Let's do that. I can't tell you how many times I have patients, epidurals, it never helped me.
Yeah.
And my brother just got one. Yeah. My brother's 34. He throws his back out all the time.
Right.
And he just went for an epidural. And I'm like, bro, I don't think you need that.
And sometimes they are helpful. But, I usually tell patients, and I like them to try this first.
Yeah.
If by 5 treatments, they're still in a lot of pain, and I've had patients where I've treated them 4 or 5 times, and I'm done. I'm like, listen, you're still in a lot of pain. You're either going to need an epidural. You might need surgery. I've exhausted this component of the treatment, and I don't like giving people false hope. Like sometimes patients are like, no, but I think I feel better. And I'm like, you don't feel better. I don't want to keep you here because I'm not about that.
But how often is that? Better. If you see 100 patients, how often is that? 2 out of 100?
I was going to say 2 or 3.
Literally, so 3%.
That is
wild numbers, dude. I've sent 4 or 5 dozen people to him, and I've never heard a negative. I can't believe I was only there for 10 minutes, dude. It doesn't even make any sense. And then I get a lot of, which happened to me also, you don't realize that you were really injured. So now you get hurt, you get a little tweak, we go to you. You know the second tweak's coming because I'm the guy, I'm right back in the fucking gym.
Right.
So but now I know what to feel the day before the tweak happens, where it's coming. And I realized that if I would have went to you 2 weeks earlier, that how much I fucked up the other side of my body, making up for the lack of strength for the hurt side, ends up being a bigger problem, specifically in the hip flexor. I know if I don't, I'll sometimes cancel my whole day if I can get you in the morning and get to you, because I know if it's a Friday, I'm like, yo, I have to see you. I'm not making it to Monday because my left side's gonna be so fucked up that now I'm gonna be 10 steps back instead of 2.
Absolutely.
And people just, they disregard that, man. And I think it's so important to really understand how your body works. And no one's going to understand how the body works until they go to you.
Yeah.
You can't read about it. You can't go to a chiropractor about it. I don't care what kind of physical therapy you've done before. It's like Chinese.
Yeah.
It's such a different realm of experience. And once you go to it, you really learn so much in one treatment.
It's pretty cool.
And I think it's one of the coolest things I've ever gone through.
Do your treatments, and this is for my own benefit of understanding, do they assist in helping with any nerve damage by any chance, or the thing? So what about like osteoporosis or arthritis or things like that?
No, and there's some patients that come in that I tell them from the first visit, because I'll have a patient like Mike or Taylor come in and they get great results, and all of a sudden it's like their girlfriend's mom who's like 82 years old.
That's why I was asking. That's why I was asking.
Like, and then all of a sudden they come in and they're like, they're either osteoporotic, and I don't want to mess with them. But on the other hand, I've had patients come in where I had a patient the other day, and she's a sweet woman in a wheelchair, comes in a wheelchair. Her husband wheels her in. She was recommended by her neurologist. And I see it's at the end of my day. And I hate to say this because I know I've been given a gift and I use it as much as I can. It's at the end of my day, and I'm like exhausted. And I see this woman come in. Now, there's a neurologist right across the hall from me, and I'm like, I see her coming down the outside window, and I'm like, I hope this is not for me.
It's for you.
Because I just don't have the. So, sure enough, she comes in, and she comes into the room, and she's an older woman, and she's in this wheelchair, and she's like, oh, you're my last hope, and pop. And I'm ready to tell her, like, I don't think I can help you. But, you get that thing in your head saying, go ahead, put your hands on her. And I said, you know what? I said, I'll try. I said, what's your issue? I have trouble standing and this and that. And I'm like, so I said, you know what? I'll try something. And guys, when I tell you I did psoas on either side, I did the hip flexors, I did her piriformis, her glutes, and I said, that's all we're going to do today. And she's like, that's it? I'm like, that's it. I just want to see if anything changes. She comes back 2 days later and she's still in the wheelchair, but I see her get out of the wheelchair. Now I'm walking down the hall. I see her get out of the wheelchair. I'm like, whoa, she got out pretty good. She's sitting on the bed, and I come in and I'm like, hey, how's everything going? And she looks at me, she says, I could kiss you.
No way.
And I'm like, wow. I said, listen, I said, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I said, I really almost gave up on you. I didn't think, she looks at me and she says, don't sell yourself short. And I'm like, dude, that hit me like, you know, we all have our talents and our gifts and stuff like that. And when she said that, I'm like, I'm never going to do that again. And then it's so funny because I have another woman who came in and she's like, oh, an older woman again. And she's like, were you able to help that woman? And her name is Mary Lee. And I said, yeah. I said, I can't believe it, Mary Lee. I said, and she's another woman that came in. She was all bent. And I said, you know, it was funny because I was honest with her. And I said, you know, I almost didn't treat you because I didn't think I could help you. And she says, she looks at me. This is Mary Lee, the other patient. She's like, you said the same thing to me. And look at me now. And I'm like, all right, that's it. You know, when somebody's talking to you up there, you're like, stop fucking doing that. You know? Just treat whoever I bring to your office.
Yeah.
And so I'll lay my hands on whoever comes, but I always do the 3 to 5. I do the 3 to 5. If after 5 treatments you're not in any relief, then I'm sending you out. And
then the nerve, you know, we worked hand in hand with Rosado, who was on last episode, and you know, you got to witness. I explained in the episode how you know, it's like magic. You know, there's no scientific breakdown. There's no X-ray or MRI you could take, but like we would hit. I remember you'd say like, Mike, this is all I think we could do from now. And I would shoot to Florida, right? And I'd come back and you go, bro, I can fucking move it all in. And it was always,
it was just amazing.
It was called neuro paralysis, which was where my brain would shut off. So we were working all down here, and the end all be all. We became really close, man. We talked weekly, you know. And I go back to the gym. I jump on my first cycle, and I flex from behind. I'm like, yo, check this out. He goes, bro, where's your ass cheek? And I had no fucking ass cheek. The whole right ass cheek was encaved. And we ended up finding that was the last round of stem cells. Was if you have watched the Avatar movie,
of course,
when the lights break into that chain of lights, that's your brain. That's how your nerves work. So he did everything operational, all the scar tissue's out now, and so for example, like we did the knee capsule first. That's like the artery of my leg. So that stem cells with that PRMF that he was talking about expanded the capsule where now I could like bend my knee. Then we shot my VMO, which is very important when you're walking. Then we did my calf because it fixed my drop foot. And I was still off, and that last nerve shot was the top of the sciatic nerve. And it took 2 doses and maybe like 3 or 4 weeks. And then he would tell me like, bro, your ass cheek's coming back, we massage it. And it so I feel like the one part that he can't do with the nerves is what Rosado, he'll send you to Rosado and vice versa. Rosado just sent you a patient with the decompression. You know, and they work hand in hand with each other. And I think that's where it's the picture perfect combo where you don't have a fucking excuse.
But he was another patient. I mean, he comes in, he's like, on his cane, he's got all these fucking tattoos all over, and he's got this little stick leg compared to the other one. I'm like, how am I possibly going to help this guy?
Yep.
And then I put my hands on, we started feeling a little bit, all right, I got this, a knee capsule, and all of a sudden, and the cool thing was that his will and his needing to absorb, like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'll treat this guy just because he's fucking cool, and he wants to get better. Nothing's better to me than an athlete who comes in. Like when I worked I had a couple of guys over there when I went to OG, and man, these athletes were like coming over because they were getting ready for High Rock, right? And I was treating them, but they were like just absorbed. They were like sponges, like wow. And then they could feel it like immediately. They get up off the table. I'm like, whoa, like that to me. If I could do that all day long, I'm the happiest guy, man.
How many times in your career do you think you're like, yo, I can't do anything with you, and then that actually happened? So like you had those two women come in, you had Mike come in, and you're like, how the fuck am I going to help you? But then you wound up helping them. So how many times do you think that you're actually not able to help them compared to how you are able to help them? Do you think that you do normally sell yourself short in certain scenarios?
I do.
Why do you do that?
You know, I don't know. And
Your resume's fucking retarded. So I don't
Yeah, bro. Like, so not that I want to make this
Yeah.
like a mental episode, but obviously,
we could, because I know
I
you
have
guys-
a question. Why do you do that?
I know you guys talk about that, and it's funny because
Do you do that in any other facet in your life?
never, man.
So it's
I've
just
been,
at
like,
work.
The most and I tell you that it's funny because as an instructor in ART, we get together once a year with Dr. Leahy in Colorado, and I was never like the A+ honor roll. I was never that guy. I was always my B, C+ guy. And I remember a chiro teacher telling me back in chiropractic college, they're like, nobody's going to ask you what you got in physiology.
Never.
When you get to practice. Just be a good chiropractor, have a great personality, and care. He kept saying, just care about the patient. So I took that to heart and I said, yeah, but when I get together with these guys, and they're so smart, man. I feel, and I talk about it when I teach, because I don't, we get into the whole realm, the scientific background of myofibroblasts and this, and I'm like,
It's foreign language to
Rob
me.
is like that.
Yeah.
Rob is like, he's so
Fucking-
knowledgeable.
oh my
I
God.
feel like a fucking idiot
Yeah.
in front of these guys, and I'm like, but you know what? It's these.
Yeah, and your treatment, I mean, if you're and Rob, I love you, bro. But like Rob is very good at what he does.
Yeah.
If you're a Lamborghini dude, Rob's still at like a Honda Civic, and I know it's fucked up. He's gonna yell at me for this, but it is the truth. And he's one of the top PT guys on the island. He's super fucking aggressive, driven. He'll talk to you for hours, and then you go to you, and it was so. I am to go into a little bit more of like the entrepreneurship part, like when someone perfects their craft,
Yeah.
you're like, and everyone's like, I'm the best, but have you ever been the best? Like, have you ever been on a team that won a national championship? Because I have been. Have you ever been with someone who's broken records at an event? Because I know people. It's like, I've seen what they do, and people take that for granted until you physically meet someone who has perfected their craft, and you're the guy, and
Yeah.
when they go to you, they'll see that. But like, and then on top of that, like how balanced you are. Like you have 4 beautiful kids, right? 2 sets of twins.
2 sets of twins. Yeah.
Wow.
And, yeah.
2 girls,
yep.
2 boys.
That is
2 sets.
Wild.
Yeah, super athletic, kids, beautiful wife, and then on the help. So like Jill almost fucking died with this diastasis recti, dude, and it would have got even worse. And we were just bullshitting. He's like, my wife had the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think it was that bad. He's like, oh no, it was bad. Go to this doctor, bro. I dropped his name. We got such a fucking VIP treatment.
Yeah.
My son's heart, remember
yeah,
I thought he
yeah.
had a little heart condition, and I'm getting all this runaround. He's like, dude, call this guy. Right in Babylon, took me an instant. He's like, oh, you're Castro's guy? Get right in. Like, he'll just do anything. So you have the successful people who are the dicks.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have someone who's an awesome guy, but you're okay. You're second place, you're third place, or you're an awesome guy. You have everything going for you, but what are you outside of your craft? You know what I mean? Like, if you have nothing really to go for, like, where is your happiness? And he's like the perfect realm. It's really, I wish people really knew him on that aspect, because, we go to dinners all the time. We hang out, we go to galas together, and it's cool having a real friend with the education. Like, but I can call this guy at 10 o'clock at night if I had to. Like, dude, I'm coming to your house. I'm fucked up right now. And I feel bad, but I really wouldn't, because like if I'm fucked up, I need you to help me. He'd be like, dude, just come on over.
I get a text from Mike, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, fuck.
Or I get a picture. That's even worse. I'm like, oh no, not a picture, black and blue, and I'm like, oh.
outside of the office, and like again, I'm more out of the 3 of us. I'm more of like the mental dude, where I like to know people's feelings. Hearing Mike say that. Because again, when you're in the office and you get the, oh my God, like I could kiss you, like, yeah, that's great. But when you really hear how somebody that you've helped admires and looks up to you and sees you in a certain light, like how does that make you feel, knowing that your craft was able to impact somebody to that extent? Do you feel fulfilled? Like, have you reached your maximum fulfillment as an entrepreneur?
I do. I feel like I've done the right thing, and I always try to do the right thing for people, but they say, what's the, people always ask me, what do you love the most about your job? And I tell them the change. When people change, and it's not just change like, like someone like Taylor who's in great physical condition, and I'll tweak a little something. He's like, hey, I feel better. It's the person who comes in like down and out, where you're like their last. I'm telling you, you're the last hope.
You were literally,
and you just see it in their eyes. They're just heavy. The fucking pain has got them like, and all of a sudden, a couple of treatments, and their whole aura changes. That to me is the best feeling I could have. So, and it's funny because then you have the patient that doesn't get better, and I will dwell on that patient, dude. And my wife is like, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, "Oh, I got this patient coming in, man. I don't think I'm going to be able to help them." And she's like, "Well, you've helped so many other people." I'm like, "Yeah, but I didn't help that guy." You know, so I'll focus on the one patient.
You'll hyperfixate on that.
Shoot, man. And sometimes it's tough, and I just try to get it, let it release. And that's why I try to have like good doctors that I know, because if I have a patient that I can't get better, I want to refer them to like the best guy. So yeah, I do feel fulfilled a lot of times, like I'm in the right path, definitely.
So as an entrepreneur, because I know that Mike and I were talking before the episode about you being, because you are an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. What advice could you give to somebody then who's looking to start their own kind of journey and get into something? What would you offer somebody who's trying to make that jump as an entrepreneur? Because you said that you feel like you found your purpose, your fulfillment, and looking at somebody whose pain washes away. Let's say they're not going into the field that you're in, but what advice could you give somebody wanting to be an entrepreneur?
I love that question because I just had this conversation with a nephew of mine, and we went out to dinner. And, he didn't go to college. He's not a school guy. And I wanted to have dinner because I want to find out. And this is the way I've taught my kids. Mm-hmm. And both my girls are in the grade. One's in vet school. The other one's going to be in PA school. And my advice to them, they weren't around 11th grade. And I said, hey, start finding a path. I want you guys to find something that you would enjoy doing. So my nephew was sitting down, we're having sushi, and I'm like, hey, but what do you want to do? Like, he tried the real estate thing, it didn't work out, he couldn't pass the test and stuff. So I'm like, well, what do you want to do? He's like, I don't know, Uncle D, I just want to make a lot of money. I'm like,
don't we all?
I'm like, bro, that's the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah.
I said, what are you passionate about? Is there anything you're passionate about, like you love it? He's like, I don't know. And he's kind of, like any typical 19, 20, 21-year-old, they just they're all over the place. Yeah. And with Instagram, everybody wants to be like a digital marketer, or they want to sell real estate because they see these kids making
they're in a constant state of comparison.
Gazillion dollars, and they think it's going to be an easy thing. So I tell them, I'm like, you got to find something that you're passionate about. The money's going to come, but if you're not passionate about it, the money's going to come and then it's going to go. And then you're going to be looking for something else. I said, find something that you're passionate about. So he's on the path to find something he's passionate about. But my one son, they're seniors this year. My one guy, engineering. He's always wanted to do engineering, and I'm like, great. My other guy, he's a hustler. He's like, Dad, I think I'm going to sell real estate. I'm going to flip houses. I'm going to do this. So I said, dude, listen, real estate is a hard business. It's not an easy, I know you see it on Instagram, but it's hard. I said, you don't sell a house for a couple of months. You don't make any money. You're not making
any commission.
So I said, let's look for something that maybe you could, So he had a heart issue. He ended up having an ablation. He had an SVT. Since he was little, he was born with it. And we had to go through a lot of testing and ultrasounds and EKGs and shit. And I said, you know what? I said, son, you want to find something where you never have to worry about finding work. You'll always have work. So I said, why don't we do something like, now he's a very good student, honor roll student, but doesn't like the whole, so we're working at SummerSlam. I'm working at SummerSlam. He wanted to meet one of the guys, Logan Paul, who was going to be there. And I'm backstage, and he's just chilling out with me and my son. And he's watching me work, and these guys are coming back and forth, and they, hey, Doc, thank you so much. And they're so appreciative, So now we get a little break, and there's no one in the room, and he's like, hey, Dad, this is pretty cool what you do. So now I'm like, oh, shit. This is the guy. He's going to follow my footsteps. Yeah. So I'm like, hey, that's cool, Tony. So you think you might? He goes, Dad, those second 4 years in college, that's a deal breaker. I'm like, oh, shit. Because you got to go, you got to go 4 years and then 4 years. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, dude. I said, thank you for being deal breaker. So I said, all right, thank you for being honest. He goes, but this is really cool. So I knew, I'm like, all right, maybe he wants to. So we ended up, he wants to do ultrasound technique. He wants to be an ultrasound tech, X-ray tech, and stuff like that. 2.5 years of
What's
school.
that? Yeah, 2.5 years. Yeah.
You're out 85 to 100,000. You'll always have work because you're either working in a hospital or doctor's office.
Pension or no, not
So
the
he-
401k.
401k,
So very
so he's
steady.
like,
But with
hey,
the
Dad,
schedule
this
too, you
is
can
a
start
good-
something on the side.
yeah.
And that's what I
You have
told
2
him.
days on, 3 days
I
off. They have
said,
all those weird schedules.
you could do that. You could make your constant cash flow. I said, then you want to take your real estate test? Do that on the side.
Double income.
You get right. So getting back to your question, my thing is find your passion, find something you're going to want to go to work. Because I couldn't imagine going to work doing something I hate.
Right.
I couldn't even
People
picture
do it
There's a lot
every
of-
day. You know how many people cry themselves to sleep every
Yeah. Oh
my
Sunday,
God,
or they just start Monday and they can't wait till Friday. So you're celebrating 2 days every 7. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't. My favorite day of the week is Monday.
That's
I
it,
plan
man.
my whole week, and I just think it's crazy not to
Yeah,
wake
man.
up every day and love waking up and jumping out of your bed. And I prefer we're all in the, we kind of every day is the same, but it's different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep,
It's never
exactly.
exactly the same. It's the same idea. You know what you're getting into, but you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
You know, and I think
That's
that's
perfect.
The,
Yeah,
and
that's
you're passionate about it, and
Yeah.
it's great advice.
Yeah,
and
no, I
and
love
the
it.
kids are great baseball players too, right?
Yeah, they both play baseball. We actually shipped them down to Florida to play at American
senior
Heritage
year.
in
That's sick.
Yeah, it's awesome.
junior and senior years. Yeah, so they're doing good. And like I said, my girls are on a great path. You know, they're going to be, good. And my one daughter who's in vet school right now, she's been wanting to be a vet since she's 8 years old. So, like you have a calling.
Uh-huh.
And you feel it
That
in your heart.
intuition and itch in the back of your head.
And it just takes you that way, and you can't stop it no matter what you do. And my other daughter was, teetering on teaching and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden she became really enthralled with helping people. She became an EMT, and just her compassion. I said, yeah, you're so caring. You got to get into something with medical and stuff. And she says, I think I'm going to do PA. And she works at Stony Brook Hospital now in the neurology
So
department.
you're able to build all of this and create this resume while still being a supportive dad, and
Yeah, you got to be
your
there.
kids.
man.
Because I think it's hard to talk about because someone doesn't have kids. You can't reflect happiness and success to someone who doesn't have kids. So it is a biased statement. But I feel like once you choose to have kids and bring them into the world, that's your ultimate sign of success. I always say, and my kids are still young, so we'll see if I eat my own words. But how successful and happy were your kids reflects the type of person you are. And I always believed like how far away your kids move reflects. Like if you grew up in New York and like, your daughter bounces to California,
Right.
Unless it's some crazy reason, like she falls in love or a job, but like if someone's just, I just growing up, all the guys that were like, yo, fuck this, I'm out of here, I'm going to California, didn't have the best relationships with their parents,
right.
like, and I can't see my kids one day, like, Jax always says, like, I'm never leaving. I said, bro, as long as you get a decent job, I'm hoping they take over my company, but
Yeah.
if you don't want to, just don't leave New York. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
That's,
stick
that's my
around.
goal, and the fact that you've grown what you've grown, you have the knowledge that you have, you've had the resume that you have, and your kids are just as happy. As it reflects a lot.
I think what's important is that, you lead by example.
Yeah.
The kids, I always say kids are mirror images. Kids do what they see, not what you tell them.
Right.
Of course.
And I always believe that.
Yeah.
I said, if your kid, especially your son, but even your daughters, if they see you coming home from work every day miserable,
Right.
complaining, they're going to be like, I can't tell you how many people I know and friends who, successful,
Right.
but
Financially.
who knows how
Right.
they come home.
Yeah.
And their kids don't want to go into that business.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't you go into that business? Your dad's making millions of dollars. Like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you
Yeah.
just want to?
He fucking hates himself.
Because they see their dad coming home fucking miserable.
Yeah, man.
So I come home, man. I pull into and I don't care how bad my day was. I pull into my driveway and it's like, whew, all right, time to be a dad now.
Yeah.
Hey, boys, like, and I'm out there on the batting cage, and
Yeah.
I get home at 7:30, and they're like, "Hey, Dad, you want to hit?" I'm like,
Fuck.
Yes, I do.
just want to eat.
Yes,
but
I
let's
do.
go out there, man.
That's
Let's hit a couple
awesome,
of
man.
buckets. And
Yeah.
I'm actually happy that Mike brought up that fatherhood kind of related question. So because we have a lot of dads that watch this show, and we have a lot of entrepreneurs that watch the show. We have a lot of businessmen that want to start something that watch the show, and women that watch the show.
Right.
Any tricks of the trade or tools that you can offer somebody to prepare them for maybe some ebbs and flows that they might go through, or anything that you can offer in advice that would prepare somebody who is starting a family that maybe is going to face some challenges that maybe you went through, and maybe how to navigate those rough waters while maintaining a successful entrepreneurial mindset and being a good family man? Anything that you can offer?
Separate it. To me, it's a big big
good
thing.
answer.
Don't bring your job home. I don't care how miserable it is. You pull into that driveway, you pull into your garage, you throw it out, and it's time to be a dad. And listen. Listening is big. Don't tend to freak out because kids are going to go through their stuff. And if your first reaction is, what are you talking about? Why you do, the kid, first of all, and my dad taught me this. He's a great listener, my dad. And he always taught me, the more you make your kid feel uncomfortable, the less they're going to come to you.
Oh, yeah.
So if you freak out every time they come to you with an issue, whether it's small or big, if you freak out, guess what's going to, as they get older, oh, I'm not telling Dad that.
They also might start freaking out also because it's learned behavior.
They don't know how, that's it, man. That's why I say they're mirror images, man. That's why it's funny because my boys are, they're starting to hang out with the boys on the team from Florida, which is great because the boys took them in like, 2 kids from New York going down to Florida, playing baseball. They're both good. I'm like, they're living with my parents, and I'm like, oh my God, I hope these other kids aren't like, oh, look at these 2 jerk-offs from New York. What are they, But the kids were so cool and they took them in. I got to meet all the dads and stuff. So the other night they went out and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, we went out with this guy whose father's like a famous Spanish actor who plays Major League Baseball and stuff. And the kids are very cool. And they're like, Dad, they're so cool. I'm like, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
If the dad's a dick,
Kids are going to be
the kid's going to be a dick, usually. And if the dad is cool, the kid's probably going to be pretty cool.
Yep.
Because they it's a learned behavior. They do what they do what they see. So, I always keep that in mind too when the way I act around people, the way I am around people, especially if my kids are around, because I want them to see how I treat people so they know. And I tell you, they've done my wife and I think, and I told my wife the other day, now that the kids are getting older and stuff like that. And I said, we did a good job.
I love that.
Right? We did a good job. Like, who would have thought? Like, here we are, 2 young kids, twins right off the bat.
Yep.
The girls, boom. And we were like, oh, shit.
2 at a clip.
Yeah, 2 at a clip. And we're like, what do we do now? My parents, her parents helped out quite a bit. And we had friends helping out, helping her while she was home and stuff. And then the girls were like 5.5 years old. And, my wife was like, well, why don't we try again? One will be so much easier. And I really, I missed that infant
Not
stage.
in your life. Another 2 at a clip.
Sure enough, 2 boys.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
man. So it's pretty
So
cool.
what's one of my final questions is, what's next for you? Is there anything after this chapter where you've already accomplished so much? Is there anything else that you maybe feel like you haven't been able to do yet? Is there anything else that you still want to do? Do you feel like you're still learning?
Would you ever retire, or is it
Yeah.
just something that?
It's funny because my boys, we're driving upstate. My father-in-law's got a beautiful place upstate. We're driving upstate. It's just me and the boys. And I love that trip. So now there's 6 of us. There's 3 dogs. So now all of a sudden we got to take 2 cars when we go upstate. So my wife usually goes in one car with the girls and the 2 dogs. We'll take the other dog, and it's just the boys.
Love it.
So yeah, so we get some good conversations in. So my one son says to me one day, he's like, Dad, are you ever going to retire? When are you going to retire? So I said, bud, that's a good question. I said, I think the best answer I could give you is when I stop enjoying what I'm doing. I said, and right now,
I don't know why I just got the chills when you were saying that. What just happened?
I said right now, it looks like it's going to a long time away because I love what I do. If I didn't have to deal with the administration, with the rent, and if all I had to do, if I could like win the lotto and I could just have all money, where I don't have to worry about any bills, nothing like that, and all I had to do was just treat patients, man, that would be to me
do
like
it till the day you
like a dream, man. Because like you said, you have a calling,
Yeah.
you're driven that way so hard, and then you have these little things that come up. Don't sell yourself short. Why'd you tell me you couldn't treat me? And that, it's universe is talking to you and saying, no, man, this is who you are. This is what you were meant to do. So just keep doing it.
Do you think after today you're going to stop selling yourself short after this conversation?
I think less. Yes.
Yeah. You see, look how important that is, man. Awesome.
Yeah. No, this is great, man. And I've been watching you guys, and you guys are doing some really good stuff.
Thanks.
And what you guys talk about is super important, whether it be entrepreneurship or just the mental aspect. Your segment on like being a dad and raising your kids and fucking getting emotional, and I'm fucking watching, I'm getting emotional and shit. And I'm like, wow, these guys get deep, but it's like, you're all badasses. So it's like, you know, it's not like you got, you know, three nerds here talking about, you know, you got guys who've been in the game for a while, have gone through a lot of shit, and have come out on top. And it's just, it's really good to see. So I really hope your shit takes off, and a lot of people
that wholeheartedly.
realize how great it is.
Is it cool? So we'll put his info up like we do, and can we get like even if it's $5, some type of discount for the first initial treatment if they mention the podcast?
If they mention Genuity, we'll give them $10 off or whatever it is.
That's
yeah,
perfect.
man.
Yeah.
We'll have people coming in, definitely.
Awesome.
So you're in Comac, right?
Yep.
Comac, yeah.
All the Long Islanders, Comac, New York,
350
Long Island.
Veterans Highway.
350 Veterans Highway, Durlan Castro. You mentioned the code word Genuity. They'll give you $10 off your first session.
Great.
I'll be going there next week.
Don't wait till you're hurt and crippled.
Don't follow mine and Taylor's
Just go up
footsteps.
for a little checkup and just see. I guarantee you hip flex are going to be tight every single time, and just start from there. And I remember the one time I thought I was fine, and he lays it down. He's like, bro, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean I feel good? He goes, your right leg's an inch and a half shorter than your left. I'm like, really? And he does this shit, and you're like, oh my God, I was just so numb. You know, and I thought I was fine. I would have just got fucked up down the road.
Happen, yeah.
I'd also like to plug your actual information in the episode, so like after we end, be able to just have your contact.
Yeah, so that way they can pause it and write it down and all that stuff. And Nancy's awesome.
Yeah.
She'll be the one answering the phone.
Yeah. I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Will you be absolutely genuine with me? No deception, please. I want you to do something that expresses you without the slightest deception.